That's what ChatGPT puts as the number one question I'm supposed to ask James Altucher when I interview him.
Yeah, that's a good question because, of course, ChatGPT has read all of my books and
Uh
thousands of
huh.
articles I've written.
Do you have a forecast for where Bitcoin's going to go?
Yeah, I would almost conservatively say between 125 and 150,000, all the way up to potentially 200, 200,000, 250. AI is going to add $15 trillion a year to the global economy, 15 trillion
Yep.
within the next few years. And it- where where is that money coming from? It's it's not the people who create AI because okay, maybe that'll be up to a trillion, but then there's another 14 trillion. So
Mhm.
that's all going to these companies that are going to use AI to basically improve their efficiency, improve the economy, and then every one of those dollars, someone is going to own one of those dollars among the 15.7 trillion dollars. I want to make sure I own some of those as well.
I'm going to kick things off by you are, I always get into somebody's background a little bit. You are a man of mystery in my book, man. I mean, we we talked the other day. You're running for president. I'm going to hear a little bit. I want to ask you a little bit about that. You are a chess master. I'm going to ask some questions about AI, that clearly come off of that. And you manage hedge funds. You work with Jim Cramer. What haven't you done?
Oh,
I
I
mean, what?
worked on Deep Blue, which was the chess computer that beat the first chess computer to beat world champion Garry Kasparov, who's a good friend of
Yep,
mine.
yep, yep. And same computer that beat all the Jeopardy champions, right? A different iteration, maybe a
Yeah,
2.0
different
version of
iteration.
that.
Yeah, different
You know what?
technology.
Let's just jump in right there, right
But I,
now, because you
but I
just.
can tell you why, from an AI perspective, why it's different. It's very interesting.
But let's go with that. Let's run down this rabbit hole right now. Why is AI different than what it used to be? Because I look at Big Blue, I look at all these things and say, hey, AI has been here for decades. What has now, where do we turn a corner on AI? What has caused it over the last 5 years to just be this thing?
It's a very good point. AI, like useful AI, has been around for decades, at least 30 years. Before
Hmm?
that, in the 30 years before that, there was also AI, but I wouldn't say it was useful. There were things called expert systems, which is like if the patient has a stomach ache, then ask this. If he also has a chest pains, ask this. So that was this big if then AI, which was not really
Sure.
that smart. It was kind of like dumb AI. But then what happened was in the early 90s, AI started to become useful with speech recognition. So a guy I went to grad school with, Kai-Fu Lee, still a friend of mine and comes on my podcast. He basically went to Apple, created the technology behind Siri, went to Microsoft, went to Google, became China's biggest investor, and he basically created the modern science of speech recognition, which has been useful ever since. Like speech recognition is a mature industry, and there's been public companies for 20 years in speech recognition. Then there's computer vision, which is what cars do when they drive. Oh, that's a stop sign. Oh, that's a baby crawling in the street. That's been around for at least 20 years, and useful. So have you ever you've seen this millions of times when you go to a website and it says prove you're not a robot. Which one of these 6 images has a bicycle in it? You know those things. So it's
Oh
called
yeah.
cap.
Oh yeah.
So guess what? They already know you're not a robot. You know how they know? Because a robot tends to click in the exact center of the screen. They already know by how your cursor moves that you're not a robot. But they still do this because those 6 images, after you say where the bicycles are, they go into a huge, massive database of images where they continue to improve their computer vision algorithms. So now they know 5 more images out of 6 that have bicycles in them. So that's how computer vision develops continually with all these captchas on websites. But what really was hard for the AI industry was understanding language, and it's the later and previous advances in AI had to do with hardware. So we were talking about Deep Blue, the chess computer that was so good at it was the first chess computer to beat the world chess champion. It was a real milestone in AI. But it
Right.
wasn't really an AI innovation. In fact, the way they created Deep Blue, and I worked peripherally on this as well with those guys, the way they made Deep Blue is they took older chess programs and they removed as much software as possible, and then they changed the software into hardware. So they kind of literally hardwired a lot of the software into a new kind of chess chip that made a chess program, a million times faster. It became like a supercomputer that could only do chess. And there was no very little software. It's hardware. The hardware is faster than software. And the innovation there wasn't AI, it was a hardware innovation. People confused it with an AI innovation. But then software really did make a leap in the past few years with these uh, uh, new style of neural networks, like these adversarial neural networks. And long story short, I won't get into the weeds of that, although it's very interesting as well. But this new kind of neural network combined with 1.5 years of nonstop computation on supercomputers is what created ChatGPT.
Really?
Yeah.
Uh, it, all right. So for the layperson out there, we look at AI right now, and it's kind of that you just mentioned the hardware. IBM going down the hardware. That has been the innovation thus far is the hardware. I mean, when you
Well, it
look at
was
it,
the innovation
NVIDIA.
thus far until a few years ago. These new style of neural networks have become
Uh-huh.
very, very interesting from a software perspective. That I would say neural networks had a big evolution about 5 to 10 years ago. There wasn't any innovation in AI for about 30 or 40 years, and this new type of neural network that was it turned out to be very good for language. It was the first time they're able to do hardware wasn't helping. Improving hardware could not help with understanding language. And what ChatGPT did, what OpenAI did when they made ChatGPT, they took everything ever written, like every book, every
Right.
Wikipedia page, every tweet, every blog post, every Reddit post, took everything ever written in history, loaded it up onto a supercomputer because they still needed the hardware. But then they used these new types of, they're called GANs, these generative adversarial networks. They took this new kind of neural network. They crunched the data for a year and a half. Then they had the first model, which was unusable. Then for another year and a half, they paid cheap labor in Africa to just play with this ChatGPT 0.1 and tell it when it had wrong answers and when it had good answers, and it would learn from that. So there was, like I said, there was these new neural networks allowed for what's called unsupervised learning. Nobody was teaching it, and then the cheap labor in Africa would teach it, yes, good answer, bad answer, and that's how they made the first version of ChatGPT.
Is this going to, and at this point, it continues to evolve on its own? Is it now is smart enough to not need someone to sit there and say yes, no, good, bad, one for
No,
good, two
it's
for bad?
always doing the yes no. It's always training, and it's people think it's going to keep getting better exponentially. Like, oh, in 2 years it's going to be conscious like a human. That's ridiculous. Like anybody saying that is just a fraud. But uh, uh, I think AI as it is has reached a certain plateau because the technology advanced. They've already done the big technological advance, but it will continue to get better because now millions of people are using it. There's a lot more training material, and it's going to get better. It's just not going to be suddenly 1,000 times better than it is today. It's not going to keep growing exponentially in how better it is.
I think of it from the investing side because that's what I do. I sit around and I try to find opportunities. And I know you have been talking a lot about AI 2.0. When I look, and I'll have Ryan flash up real quickly that image that you memorized, right?
Yeah.
So this goes back, and this is the most. This is one of those things, James. When I look at what happens in the market, and I'm not talking about now. I'm not talking about 5 years ago. This is a chart from the 1600s. This was back when the Netherlands
The
was a
South Sea bubble.
superpower.
I recognize the chart.
Yes. So this was, I mean, literally, the Netherlands were a superpower. A lot of people don't even know that. Back in the 1600s, they took it from the UK. And, we're kind of in that position right now. And you can listen to whoever you like on whether we're teetering out of that and China's ready to take over. But this goes back to tulip mania. And we had, specifically it was in Holland, they say, but you had the tulip market that just went absolutely nuts. It was, what was the dot com bubble? What was the housing bubble? And what now I think applies to AI. When you look at this chart, I think you can, along with me, follow exactly where we are. And it kind of goes
Correct.
exactly to what you're saying. That media attention area, we've had that first mania phase here over the last couple of years where everybody's become aware and everybody's buying everything AI related. But we're going to have a little period here where maybe there's a pullback. And, again, we saw it with semiconductors. Semiconductors were that great innovation that led us to the dot com bubble, right? What
Right. Although,
is,
although I would say with semiconductors, it wasn't a bubble like internet and crypto and perhaps AI is.
right,
Semiconductors was a real. It always was a solidly growing industry. And look, Intel had like a $5 million market cap when it went public, so there wasn't,
right.
in 1968 or nine, whenever it was. I don't feel like semiconductors went through a bubble phase, but internet, of course, did.
Right. But you could argue, I mean, what I'm trying to look at, what caused that bubble? There's always there's
Sure.
cause effect, let's call it. And I think that innovation that we saw in the semiconductor sector back in 1993, 94 led to the productivity, led to the efficiencies, led to networking, and kind of really, the internet was around in the 60s and the 50s, right? At its core,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
AI.
Early 70s. So
Yeah.
71, DARPA invented the internet at Stanford, MIT, and I believe Carnegie Mellon.
Yep. And so just like that, you had you I mean it's very eerie similar to what we're seeing with AI. It's been around, since the 80s, but in a different form. And now, when we hit the 90s and all of that kind of came in at a sweet spot, semis took off, and but that led to, or and it enabled the dot com bubble to start, or the internet to really take center stage. AI,
Right.
I feel, is in that spot right now where we had that quick rush up and everybody went, "Oh wow, this is going to be the best thing since sliced bread." We'll see a little bit normalization, but there's something else out there on the horizon, right? That's going to take us
Well,
all the way to the top of this chart.
let's talk about this for a second because first off, let's what is a bubble? So I would say the definition of a bubble is prices are going up today simply because
Mhm.
they went up yesterday. So there's no basis in valuation. It's just like, oh my gosh, they're up again. I gotta buy, and so everybody gets this frenzy, like a fear of missing out. The
The
only
FOMO,
reason it
yeah.
goes up today is because it went up yesterday, and I feel that really did happen in the mid to late '90s with .com companies. Like you had examples like 1-800-Flowers would add .com to their name on
Yep.
IPO day, and the IPO would shoot up 50% as a result. Like it was
Yep.
insane. Pets.com had no customers. It was a billion-dollar company. So that's where things are going up, not on the basis of, oh, it's really worth this, on the basis of their cash flows. Things are just going up just because there was a Super Bowl ad and everybody's excited. But the
Right.
problem the internet had in late '90s, and the problem crypto had, let's say, in its first 10 years, and even to some extent happens now, in both cases, there were no users. Like like 1999, you have all these billion-dollar companies going public in the internet. There was not enough users on the planet to give these companies cash flows. The internet didn't really. I think I last heard the words "the internet is just a fad" in 2004. But after 2004, what happened? Like, why did people suddenly feel comfortable putting their credit cards in? It wasn't until 2003, 2004 that people were comfortable with that. Why did these? Why did people stop thinking it was a fad? Well, because in 2005, the internet for the first time cracked a billion users globally. Crypto is going to do the same thing. They're at about 200 or 300 million users globally. Maybe in 2 years they'll be at a billion users, and then I encourage people, you position yourself now because then it won't be in that bubble territory. People will stop saying it's a fad. And but here's the thing with AI. Here's why I might disagree with you. AI is the one technology where I see the hype equals the reality. Like because AI actually has been a mature industry for at least 30 years, and only
Mhm.
now because ChatGPT has opened the door to consumers can just play with AI. They never could just play with computer vision before or speech recognition. Now they can just play with. I could ask like, write me a speech in the style of Napoleon about the importance of bowel movements, and it'll do it. And 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 then at the same time, AI is incredibly useful at a corporate level. Like if I was running a newspaper, I would fire all my reporters today and have AI write all the news with maybe supervision from one or two people. So, not that reporters don't do a good job, but newspapers are in trouble, and this is the way to save profits. Like AI is going to change every industry, and guess what? It already is doing it. Like I'm seeing many websites do what I just said, firing all their writers and just doing it with AI. Like I could tell, you could tell the AI style of writing, and so
Right.
so I think the reason we're having a soft landing in the economy right now, I mean, we'll see what happens. Nobody knows, but there's more potential for a soft landing than one would have thought. I think it's because AI has already started increasing productivity across every industry. The reality has almost moved faster than the hype.
Yeah. The thing I keep thinking of, and I that's a great point on kind of this was a perfect time for AI to really get into mainstream because it is helping us to get out of the heavy weight of a recession that we had just a year ago. Um, I wrote something just a couple weeks ago about how AI has kind of been, from my perspective as an investor, I've looked at it as the technology foundation. That's where the investment has been, keeping in mind that we're a service industry. Our GDP is what 70 to 80% comes from the service industry. That is where AI is going now. We're going to start utilizing that as part of the service industry, and that I think is that power, as you said, where we kind of get, it's going to go high and stay. The value is going to be recognized, and it's not going to just drop out of the sky after it gets recognized. This is going to be an
Right.
interesting 3 to 5 years of actual application of AI, right?
Right, like look, take the example you just mentioned about the service industry. I mean, there's a
Hmm.
small public company, Soundhound. I'm not necessarily recommending it, I'm just mentioning it, but there's a
Okay.
small public company, Soundhound, that their latest contract was with some big chain of restaurants, of fast food restaurants, to do all the drive-through. Like the speech recognition is so good, it'll get hear what you're saying, immediately feed it into the workers who are making the food, and a lot of that's getting automated, in terms of robotic automation. And boom, you could at this point have the technology to run a drive-through McDonald's without any humans. Now they haven't gotten to that point, but that's what's going to happen.
Huh. True, true story on that. And it's funny you bring up McDonald's. My father was an electrical engineer back in the 70s. You remember the boxes that they had over the fry machines that had the timers that would flash and they would beep?
No,
That was a
not all.
drive-through timer. Play along just for a second. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was a drive-through timer, and there was a sensor when you pulled up and they started talking to you, and a sensor when the car pulled up to the window and you left. And it was the first of trying to not automate but kind of regulate the drive-through. My dad was the one that invented that, and it
oh
was,
yeah.
it was this when they licensed it to McDonald's, it was this innovation that was, oh my gosh, we're going to become more efficient. Something now taking our order and expediting that is just beyond my mind, looking at how, we've progressed. I think it's great.
So like that's at a big corporate level where billions of dollars will be saved, and we're seeing that throughout every industry. Like right now, John Deere is having
Oh,
creating driverless tractors that will more efficiently spray pesticide, because they'll know where there's weeds and where there isn't. So they'll save billions of dollars for farmers on productivity, time, pesticide costs, and so on.
yield.
Perfume
Yeah.
companies working with IBM on AI to make 10 times faster the process of creating a new perfume and new compounds and so on. So but even at an individual level, I was talking to the CEO of freelancer.com, which is like a LinkedIn for freelancers. They have 60 million freelancers finding jobs all across the planet. And he says that basically logo designers, as an example of one industry, they used to do one logo a week. A record label would do a logo for this book or record or whatever. And now the same logo designers are doing 10 a day because of AI. Like it's just increasing. When I do a podcast, sometimes I ask, hey, I have Richard Branson coming on. What are 10 questions you would ask? And gives me okay questions, at least speeds my thinking a little bit. So it's enormous. That's why I say the hype hasn't even caught up to the reality, because the reality is even more than the hype would suggest. So that's why I don't think
Yeah.
it's going to get into bubble territory. Although I would be careful. I think chips will always do well, but just because Nvidia went up 200% last year doesn't mean it's going to go up 200% next year. Now you have AMD working on fast chips, Intel, and chip companies leapfrog each other. Whoever's the best gets replaced the next year. So, but there's going to be a lot of just AI filtering into industry. Some companies will be transformed, and their profits in mature industries already, like John Deere, might triple very quickly because of AI.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of that's where I was going with this. This is the shift now to where how we apply it. Let me go down the road a little bit with you. You just mentioned a couple names, and I always like to tell people we're not giving you, don't go out and buy these. We're not your financial
Definitely
advisors.
don't.
We're 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 giving out ideas here, and in some cases I own IBM. I think IBM is one of those big sleeper stocks. I think it is, when we talk about the application in the service industry, that's where IBM is. I mean, their business has been the service industry. Sure, they built computers back in 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the golden screwdriver was their best business model out there, but they really are a service company. Salesforce.com is another one that comes to mind for me. Where where do you see the big opportunities? I mean, I'd ask you for a couple of companies. I mean, I'm always curious what other people think here.
Yeah, I think there's what I call the difference between AI 1.0 and AI 2.0. So AI 1.0, they're the enablers. They're the ones who create the AI. So, Nvidia we spoke about, they're an example. All
Mhm.
these large language models need fast chips to process them. Nvidia makes really fast chips. Previously, Nvidia was known for the fast gaming chips and the fast chips for crypto mining. Now those same chips are for AI processing of these large language models. So Nvidia is an enabler. Microsoft, which invests $10 billion in OpenAI, they're an enabler. Google, of course, enabler. I think I don't want to say their time has come and gone. Those are great companies. They will continue to grow, but they're not going to have like that AI surge that they've already kind of had last year. They're fine. I I would happily recommend them, but I'm not recommending them here, of course, but they're fine. But now you have this AI 2.0, which is what companies will benefit the most from having AI. They'll benefit when you increase productivity and efficiency, you increase profits. So if you're trading, at 20 times earnings and you double your profits overnight because of AI, your stock not only doubles, but your earnings multiple might go to, you trade at 30 times earnings now because you're growing faster. So they might triple in a year once they start really adapting their business models to AI. So, I mentioned $100 billion market cap company like John Deere, but almost every company in every industry is going to use AI. There's some small caps, micro caps that you know. For instance, what if you make body cameras or any kind of camera? And I know of one company, they have mug shots of 185 million people who have been, let's say, brought into jail for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Well, what if your security cameras at Walmart recognize everyone who's ever, as soon as they walk in, oh, this person shoplifted at Walmart 5 years ago. Keep an eye on him or kick him out. That's going to save Walmart billions of dollars. It's just nonstop the uses. So I almost want to say every company, but I mentioned John Deere. Uh, I kind of, we're seeing this just happen, so I'm kind of thinking of every company equally. But a lot of media companies are going to benefit from AI. I don't know. I have to really think more about what the greatest AI 2.0 companies are.
Uh, I like. Well, let's not. You know what? I've done something here. Let's have fun for about 30 seconds, maybe even 60. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Can you share a pivotal moment in your life or career that significantly shaped your philosophy and approach to entrepreneurship and personal development? That's what ChatGPT puts as the number one question I'm supposed to ask James Altucher when I interview him. I
Yeah, that
couldn't
was a very good.
I couldn't
That
read.
was a very
That's
good question for me.
The Richard Branson thing just gave me two. I had to type it in real quickly. I went for 5 instead of 10.
Yeah, that's a good question because, of course, ChatGPT has read all of my books and
Uh
thousands of
huh.
articles I've written. So I've written over 5,000 articles in the past 20 years, and I've written over 20 books. And yeah, in the late 90s, I sold an internet company. I used to build websites for, and you probably tell by the way I look, but I used to build websites for gangster rap record labels. That was my
Uh huh.
specialty. And
Yeah.
so I did Bad Boy Records, Loud Boy Records, Death, Death Row Records, the Interscope Records, and so on. And I did a lot of movie studio websites. And I sold that company for 15 million in 1998. And I blew it all. I lost it all. I threw it all away. I didn't know anything about investing then. This is 23 years ago, 25 years ago. I didn't know a single thing about investing. And I just figured, oh man, I'm smart. I sold a company, so I must be smart at other things too. And I just flushed it all down the toilet. It took me about, and I cashed out. Like I was smart about that. I cashed out. I did not have stock. I had 15 million cash. And then I probably lost, it took me about a year and a half, and I lost all of it. I remember going to my ATM machine, and I had $143 left in my account, and I had bought the big apartment in New York City. I had, I had two little babies to take care of. I thought I was rich and wealthy forever, but I wasn't. I had like a psychological problem where it wasn't enough, and I felt like I needed to make more. And then by trying to do that, I lost everything, and I was certainly depressed. I was feeling suicidal at moments, and it was just, it was really just like the worst time of my life. And not only that, I then, several years later, made money again and sold a company, a social media company, and for millions. And then I lost it all again. And so I just was constantly getting depressed. Like there's three skills to money: making it, keeping it, growing it. And they're completely different skills, it turns out. And so I knew how to make it, but at the time, and this is a long time ago, I didn't know how to keep it. I didn't know how to grow it. And I had to take a step back and figured, and I was so depressed again. I figured, what was I doing right on the way up, and what was I doing wrong on the way down? Because it happened to me so many times. It was practically statistically significant, and that changed my life when I started organizing my life around a practice that was healthier for me and keep me on the upswing.
What's the one thing that you do, let's say on a daily basis or a weekly basis, that keeps you moving away from that point? Because obviously you reflected that you just described a great pivot point, or at least a couple of them. What's the thing that you do to keep yourself moving towards success now?
Yeah, and so on the one hand, it's going to sound a little bit of a cliche because it's going to sound so
Uh-huh.
simple. But every day I make sure I try to be 1% better at doing things for my physical health, emotional health, creative health, and I'll describe that in a second, and spiritual health. So physical health is obvious. Like you can't start a company if you're sick. Emotional health, you can't have ideas and start a company if you're arguing with your spouse all day, every day. Spiritual health is like, look, you can't control the past and you can't be anxious about the future. You have to focus on right now. But creative health, I started, I was so depressed and I just had no idea what I was going to do to make money. And I lost my house, like it was taken from me. And I started, though, coming up with, I bought 100 waiter's pads because I love the look of a waiter's pad. And every day I'd go to a cafe and I would just bullet point 10 ideas, 10 bad ideas every single day. So 10 ideas for businesses I could start, 10 ideas for articles I could write, 10 ideas for, you know, articles you could write. And I started coming up with not only ideas for myself, but for other people, just to exercise. Like everybody thinks ideas are a dime a dozen, but they're not. Like it's really hard to come up with good ideas, and creativity is like a muscle. And if you don't exercise your muscles, they atrophy. If you don't walk for 2 weeks, you need physical therapy to walk again. Like if you were in the
Right.
hospital for 2 weeks, it's hard to walk. And it's the same thing. If you don't use your creativity muscle, it will just atrophy. So this is kind of the way I exercise every day, my creativity muscle every single day since that point. And uh, it's led to so like I'll write 10 ideas for Google and I'll send them to Google. And every now and then, a company I send them to invites me, hey, these are great ideas. Can you come if you're ever in the area? Like this happened with Amazon. So I sent 10 ideas to Amazon once, ideas for your self-publishing business. And I cold sent them and they wrote back, the guy wrote back and said, oh, these are great. Let us know if you're ever in Seattle. And I said, by coincidence, I will be in Seattle next week. Now, guess what? I had never been in Seattle before and I had no plans to ever visit Seattle in my entire life. But I flew out to Seattle that week and I met like all these top people at Amazon, not Jeff Bezos. And they showed me around. And then when I self published my own book, they really promoted it. It was number one in the entire Amazon store and got, over 1 million in sales. And, uh, you know, and that's just from coming up with ideas and sending them to people. I've had so many opportunities. I've spoken at Airbnb. I've consulted for LinkedIn. I've spoken at Google. Uh, I've started entire companies off of ideas that I've sent other people. I so to this very day, I'll tell you the idea list I wrote this morning. So some kid wrote me and said he loves skateboarding and is starting a skateboarding business and is looking for investors and would I be interested? And I wrote back and I said, no, I won't be interested. But took a look at your website. I looked at your background. I watched some of your videos, and here's 10 bad ideas for you. And so I came up with 10 ideas for a skateboarding business. And he wrote back, wow, this is amazing, but I'm just really interested in investors. And so I said no, but you should have spent more time on the ideas.
That's very cool. So it's just coming down to, I mean, that the answer is exercising your that creative mind every day. I love the
Yeah,
reaching out to people and giving them ideas too. That kind of seems like a karma type of thing. Hey, if it's not for me, I'm going to help somebody else out at the same time. And
well,
secretly, I'm one of those karma guys. I think we all should be.
yeah, like I was able to start a hedge fund because because I lost all this money from investing. I became obsessed. This is like 2001. I became obsessed with learning the entire history of investing. Something I should have done before losing the money. I studied every investing strategy, studied so much, and then I wrote software mimicking different investment strategies. And so I sent some of the. So I wrote a hedge fund manager who I had studied his career very intensely, and I said, "Here's 10 ideas. Here's 10 trading ideas based on software, and I'm happy to share the software with you as well. And it fits your business model." And he said, this is great. How about we meet and invest in your hedge fund? I didn't have a hedge fund at the time, but I started one and he was the first investor and it did very well. So this idea has created careers for me. Now, some people say ideas are a dime a dozen, execution is everything. But they forget that execution is a subset of ideas. Like, let's say you and I came up with an idea for a business. Well, one execution idea is let's raise $2 million, hire 50 programmers, build the product, and then hire a head of sales. Another execution idea is let's see if we could do this manually for a few of our friends and then ask them, are they willing to pay for a service like this? If yes, then go further. If no, you don't have to waste any more time and you've saved yourself
Right.
raising $2 million. So two totally different execution ideas, but you have to be creative to think of the spectrum of execution ideas.
Yeah. All right. I can't help myself going back to AI for just a second. You mentioned
Sure.
the hedge fund. Let's bring those two together real quickly. If AI, and I'm going to throw out a little Boolean here, if AI is truly going to be able to go out and learn everything, it's looking at all the data, it's looking at everything we're writing, it's looking at everything now. It seems we've opened the gates and said, here, come on inside and learn everything we know. Is there a point where investing is no longer and let's go back, the finance 101, based on value. When you look at value in the market, that's what we're all supposed to be doing. I mean, you go back and a company generates revenue, earnings, they return it to shareholders. That brings up going to that definition at some point, and the market's turned more into, and hedge funds specifically historically have been an area where you try to take advantage of inefficiencies in the market. Price inefficiency, it can be anything. If you're running, arbitraging money around the world, chasing a couple pennies in the currency markets, right? Is there a point where AI is going to learn enough that inefficiencies in the market will stop existing and
Well,
value be what value is? And it buying 100 shares of Microsoft now turns into nothing more than going to the bank and putting the same amount of money into a CD.
so the answer is no, but with qualification. First off, AI is we're hearing about AI every day now because consumers
Mhm.
are using it with these large language models like ChatGPT. So that's why we've all become fascinated by AI. But AI being, as we talked about before, with speech recognition's been around since the 90s, computer vision's been around since the OOs. AI for investing has been around since the early OOs, late 90s. Like Renaissance, the biggest hedge fund in the world, was primarily an AI based hedge fund that started in the 90s. So AI has already been around for that. And what happens is, and look, I was in that business. I wrote AI programs for myself, and that's how I started my hedge fund, is that I would look for a, statistical patterns. Like an
Mhm.
example pattern might be if Microsoft had a bad earnings day and then it went down the next 4 days in a row, 98% of the time the fifth day was up. And I had data, every tick of data since 1945, and my software would go through all this data and find patterns like that and then I would automatically trade those patterns as they occur during the day. So that works until it doesn't. So one
Right.
time I had a strategy that was like literally I called the strategy the ATM because every time the pattern triggered, it made money. It was like 100%. And so I wrote about it on thestreet.com. I wrote an article about the strategy. And a friend of mine who also used the strategy called me and said, "You idiot." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Why did you write that?" And I'm like, "It's a strategy for the entire market, like NASDAQ futures. Like me writing on thestreet.com is not going to affect this strategy." It never worked again. So
Yeah.
as that industry grew, the quantitative trading industry, it really did get rid of all of the easy inefficiencies. And so
Mhm.
you have to go harder and harder. You need more and more PhDs in software, but there's always going to be inefficiencies. It's gonna the market ultimately is driven by a lot in the short term by fear and greed, and sometimes the fear is too much, sometimes the greed is too much, and that creates the inefficiencies. Stuff like high speed trading and little arbitrages like that gets goes away because of the software, but the big moves like during COVID or during the great financial crisis, uh, those efficiencies remain.
So the psychology
And
of the market's never going to go away, because that's basically you're
right.
describing the psychology of investors at this point. Um,
I mean, a friend of
which
mine runs a $5 billion quant fund, like an AI driven fund. He has 3,000 different patterns he trades across. He was 20%
okay,
down last year. Like it's just and also the market doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So just because some
right?
inefficiency existed for 20 years doesn't mean it's going to exist tomorrow.
No. Um, how much are you into technical analysis? Are you?
Uh, I'm interested in only to the extent to which it follows. Let's say there's a difference between quantitative and technical. So,
Mhm.
so I like quantitative where I can see from the data, oh, this is a historical pattern that exists. I'm not as much into just because I never tried really. I'm not as much into technical where you eye a chart and you see what's happening. Like I
Mhm.
was always interested in the statistics and data of the market.
Yeah. It's I've been a technical analyst since 1998.
Okay.
and I actually went to a really cool, very cool. You would have loved something like this. It was a seminar, 4 or 5 day seminar up at MIT. Their business school put on, and they'd actually taken their financial engineering guys and quantified technical patterns like your head and shoulders patterns, your double tops, all of these things. And the easiest ones to quantify are moving averages, a 50-day moving
Yeah,
average, and try to say it. The reason I'm going down this is when you said the market doesn't, it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. That's where I think of technical analysis. Um, and the reason, again, I ask this is just recently, as we've seen cryptocurrency, I'll turn the page over to crypto for a minute because you've got a great history in crypto. We've seen crypto become more mainstream. And obviously, with the approval of the ETFs, the new ETFs, you're going to see my mother putting money into crypto. Everybody's going to be doing this.
that's exactly
And
right.
yes, and as a result, I always call it, it's the indoctrination now. The tent is now large and everybody's going to want to come in, which makes this an attractive investment all over again. For my purposes, technical analysis now works on crypto because there is a human element, and technical analysis is based on reactions to breaking those trends. But where do you see crypto going over the next couple of years as this new? I mean, it is for some people out there, it's a completely new asset that has garnered not only the attention but kind of the respect of Wall Street. Everybody who was saying this is a flim flam, stay away from it, is now saying put some of your portfolio in it. It's like gold, right?
Yeah, and it's even better than what we hear and see in the U.S. The
Hmm.
issue with the U.S. and crypto is that the strongest currency in the world right now is the dollar. Like,
Hmm.
other countries would love to replace the dollar as the global reserve currency, but there's an important reason no other country's currency can replace the dollar. It's because the U.S. discloses so much information, for better or for worse. Here's how many dollars we printed last week. Here's how
Yep.
many dollars we tore up last week because we didn't, we took the money from the bonds and we didn't do anything new with it. Here's, where we store all the dollars. Here's how much cash exists. Here's how much is digital transactions. So there's a lot of disclosure that China's not willing to do, Russia's not willing to do, the EU is not even willing to do. So the dollar is it. But so people who depend on the dollar, like the banking industry and the IRS, they don't like crypto because it's a new alternative that actually solves a lot of the problems the dollar has. Like, one problem the dollar has is somebody other than me can determine the value of the dollars in my pocket. If the Federal Reserve prints 2 trillion or 4 trillion more dollars like they did in 2020, that decreases the value of my dollar. I didn't do it. I didn't let them do that. I didn't let them decrease the value of the dollars in my pocket. That's one problem among many. And I've actually talked to central bankers in other countries. They are trying to figure out. They know we're in an antique payment system right now around the world. They want to upgrade, and crypto is the path to that. But there are even stronger use cases of crypto that people are only now beginning to realize. Like, I won't get into all the technical details, but crypto is perfect for something called decentralized computing. Crypto is actually really great for marketing, and like, if I maybe there's an Uber coin, and the more I ride Uber, the more Uber coin I mine, and I could use Uber coin to pay for future Uber rides. Now, that's a classic marketing. It's like travel points on airlines, frequent flyer miles
Hmm.
on airlines. But there's an important difference. I could trade my Uber coins for Airbnb coins or Ethereum or a stable dollar coin or whatever. So that's a big improvement on current marketing techniques. So there's a lot of use cases for crypto that people haven't even thought about yet. So I think, but the important thing is, you mentioned that earlier, your mom is not going to go to an exchange called, I don't know, Sushi Swap, and figure out how to buy one Bitcoin, and then, oh, do I put this in my Tether hard wallet, and I remember my 100-letter passcode.
Nope.
Grandma and grandpa, mom, dad, they're not going to do that. So what an amazing thing happened just a few weeks ago, which is the Bitcoin ETF. First Bitcoin ETF was announced after 7 years in court with the SEC. And uh, that's a big deal. I mean, there was a lot of anticipation in it, so crypto went up, and now it's sort of like been treading water a little bit. First it went down, now it's moving up again. But tens of billions, even hundreds of billions of dollars that previously would not have gone into crypto is now going to go into. It's easy to buy Bitcoin. You just buy the Bitcoin ETF through your stockbroker, and then it's going to happen to Ethereum, and it's going to happen to all uh, alter, alternative tokens, and and then we need to really see the use cases blossom up more than they have been. But that'll happen just like it did with the internet at the billion user mark.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I just looked at the technical chart of Bitcoin and it just broke back above its 50-day moving average and is breaking above 45,000. The technicals are working right now. This thing's going to 50,000 over the next couple of weeks, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
Um,
and it's so funny because okay, it hit whatever it did before the Bitcoin ETF. Then right after the Bitcoin
Mhm.
ETF, it's the sell the news phenomenon. It went down to the 38s,
Right?
and everyone came out, including the CEO of JP. Bitcoin's fad. It's going to zero, and now they're disappeared again because it's going up. But there's no reason if you have hundreds of billions of dollars waiting to finally get into crypto because of this ETF, why would it go down? Now, the only reason it would go down is if 5 years from now we see that there's actually no use cases, but that's not going to happen. You already have significant use cases happening all across the crypto industry.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. You brought the sell the news. That goes right back to that one thing that won't change, hasn't changed since 1600, and that is investor psychology. I mean, we follow whether it's FOMO, whether it's my, when you look at it, this was a buy the rumor into that ETF announcement, the SEC
Yeah,
announcement,
classic.
and then classic sell the news. It happens with earnings almost every day. It happens with something like crypto. Anytime it's in the headlines, you can count on investor psychology driving prices more. I often say speculation is a much more powerful driver of a stock price or an asset's price than the fundamentals because speculation goes down to right here, where we think our expectations for something.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's the psychology is very strong. Like the buy the rumor, sell the news was almost an obvious prediction going into the Bitcoin ETF. And people even
Mhm.
asked me, do you think because look, Bitcoin went from 30,000 to 47,000 in the anticipation of a Bitcoin ETF. And people would ask me, is this a buy the rumor, sell the news? It was clearly a buy the rumor, but is it a sell the news? And I'll be honest, I did not think it would be a sell the news because I thought there would be so much money lined up to buy the ETF that would keep it going. But
Yeah.
that drive to sell the news is so strong. Clearly, everybody was waiting until after the sell the news before they would start
Yeah.
buying.
There's nothing wrong with taking profits, right? I mean, I think that's where everybody. Some
Yeah,
people think that taking profits, oh, you're a profiteer, you're in. No, it's natural to ring the cash register every once in a while, and now you've got people coming back in. Let me ask you, from a broader perspective, end of 2024, maybe even halfway through 2025. Do you have a forecast for where Bitcoin's going to go? I know you follow crypto closely.
yeah. I would almost conservatively say between 125 and 150,000, all the way up to potentially 200, 200,000, 250. I'm more interested. I actually sold my Bitcoin about a year ago, and I announced this in my newsletter.
Huh?
I'm a believer in Bitcoin, but I'm a believer more in Ethereum, and a big catalyst for Ethereum is going to be the Ethereum ETF, which is not going to happen until later this year at the very least. And also, here's the thing: Bitcoin's the biggest, but Ethereum actually has more transactions per day than Bitcoin, and the reason is people don't really use crypto as a currency. People are doing this decentralized computing and all these other use cases I mentioned earlier. And how do they do that? Ethereum is almost like a programming language to create other crypto projects. And so Ethereum is being used and it has more transactions per day than Bitcoin. Plus, Ethereum's scaling quite a bit this year with upgrades. So, A, I'm more bullish than Ethereum, but B, I am much more bullish, like thousands of percent more bullish on the tokens that will benefit from more crypto users and more crypto ecosystem in from countries and so on. So the picks and shovels tokens, I'm a huge believer in. Bitcoin, I actually don't really know. I think it'll be always a store of value. Will it be a full currency? I have no idea.
Does it replace gold at some point as a
Among younger
store of
people, yeah.
value?
Yeah, because look, people say Bitcoin's just ones and zeros, and gold. Look, gold is a viable investment. I'm not trashing gold right now as an
Yeah.
investment, but when the same people say Bitcoin is just ones and zeros, they don't realize gold is just a rock. Like there's no other value to gold. There's all silver has the exact same industrial uses as gold and is 60 times cheaper. And also gold is, who has gold? Gold, you have it if it was underground in your country. So if you were
Yeah.
lucky and you had it, like, and unlike oil, which has a big use case, it why should just the lucky countries win if there's no real use case? So I think older people like gold, but younger people, they don't even know how to buy gold. They know how to buy crypto. So, and the younger
Yeah.
people are the ones who are going to make more and more money over the years.
So this will turn into a generational thing. I mean, we'll pass the torch from gold being, kind of that you got to buy it and keep it in your closet, you hoard it under your bed, to your untethered digital wallet is going to be the thing for the
Yeah,
younger
and look,
investors. But I was going to say investors, but almost everybody that's generationally a little bit lower on the curve here.
yeah, and also look, you can't spend your gold. Like gold only is a store of value. Bitcoin, now, will it be fully adopted as a currency? That's what I was referring to earlier. I don't know. But you can actually you can go to your local deli and spend Bitcoin, because if you get a debit card or credit card from Coinbase, they will do the transaction for you and switch everything around to dollars very quickly, and you can spend your Bitcoin use it as a currency today. So gold can't do that. And yes, it is ones and zeros, but it's a million man hours of programming that made there's real value in Bitcoin. Like the fact that this technology exists, that now we can do decentralized computing, which is a huge problem in computer science, like how to do this efficiently, is solved by crypto, and people don't really think that much. I mean, there are tokens. There's a token, for instance, not recommending it. It's up 1,000% in the past year. There's a token Render, RNDR, that um, uses decentralized computing to render movies in Hollywood. Like Disney is a client, Sony, and so on. So it's just real use cases of these. How's Render built? I believe it was built on top of Ethereum. So there's real use cases that are not just as currency.
Are
It's here
are
to
there
stay.
three or Are there three or four of those use tokens that you like, not as recommendations, but what's on your list in terms of those other the coins, if you will,
Yeah.
that
So
aren't your Ethereum and your Bitcoin?
yeah. So okay, and not Ethereum either, because I do like Ethereum, but and
Mhm.
also if you're in Ethereum, it's not so bad to diversify into similar tokens to Ethereum like Solana, or Hedera. But uh, yeah, there's like a token, as an example. There's a token TAO, uh, BitTensor, which is similar to Render, but does decentralized computing on large language models and AI. That's had a huge move recently because of the hype in AI, but I would keep an eye on it. There's another one, the Graph, which is like a Google of blockchains. So if you have a big crypto, let's say Visa has its own blockchain to keep track of all their transactions, but they need to search their records, they would use a token like the Graph to 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 do that, and they would build that into their system. Um,
Okay.
there's picks and shovels plays like that. Um, you know, there's token QNT, hasn't made a huge move really, but they allow different blockchains to talk to each other, because there's a lot of private corporate blockchains, so but the blockchains need to talk to each other, and that's just like how the internet was built. All these different companies had different networks, but they needed to talk to each other. So the internet was created so different types of networks could talk to each other. And so there's tokens that do that, like UNT, and maybe Chainlink is like that. Uh, so Uniswap is one of the biggest decentralized finance exchanges, which is going to be pretty interesting. There's a lot of good tokens out there.
All right. Let me shift things here. This will be a big one. We're going to take a left turn. You told me the other day you have filed to run for president.
Yeah.
So the questions, and ChatGPT didn't give this to me as a question, but the questions are going through my head. They're just, I mean, they're fun. But let me ask you, let's bring in AI real quickly. Is AI, and this term bad actor, I don't like the bad actors thing. They're just kind of bad people. But will AI make this presidential election, will this just be something like we've never seen before? Or is this just going to, you think everybody, bringing up this, oh, we're going to see all kinds of bad actors? Nothing's going to happen. What do you see over the next 8 or 9 months as somebody whose, name is up on the FEC's website?
Well, let me explain first why I did that. So I don't vote. And for your listeners who are very upset about that, and a lot of people are very upset if you don't vote, there's a saying, people died for your right to vote, or if you don't vote, then you don't have a right to have an opinion. And I dispute all this. I don't vote because I don't really believe in voting. It's all corrupt. I don't really believe in voting for the lesser of two of evils when you're just voting for evil. So I hate that. And B, um, just like you, I have a podcast. I've had Republican candidates for president on my podcast. I had Andrew Yang recently. I had Democrat candidates on my podcast for president. I've had Libertarian candidates on my podcast. So I like to really be actually neutral. And if you vote, I think it does bias the brain, so that you just can't be neutral once you make a decision like that. And the other thing is, but I have a lot of opinions. And so I wanted to say, no, I do have a right to have an opinion. So the day after the 2020 election, I went to fec.gov, and it takes about 10 minutes. All of your listeners should do this because it's fun. And in 10 minutes, you could be running for president and you'll be officially on the list. You go to ballotpedia.com, which keeps track of all the presidents. My name's on that list. You go to fec.gov, my name's on the list. All the listeners, in 10 minutes could be officially running for president. So I encourage you to do it. You get a lot of fun out of it. And then you're allowed to have an opinion whether you vote or not. But
I
okay,
like it.
to answer your question, I mean, yeah, this election's going to be screwed up, not because of AI, but it's there. I have never, I mean, when was the last time you've seen two major constitutional issues in a week that are like government changing? So, for instance, in this past 2 weeks, we've seen this border crisis. Okay, the Supreme Court says one thing and about the Constitution, like not even one of the amendments, just like an article on the Constitution. No, federal law overrides state law. And then Texas, they're quoting the Constitution. No, it says in article this, if a state has a right to defend itself against invasion. So they're both correct. It's a constitutional battle. Another thing, Colorado, can they take Trump off the ballot, or can they take any candidate off the ballot? I'm not saying this about Trump or anything, but oh yes, they say the Constitution says if someone's been involved, if an office holder has been involved in an insurrection, he can't be on the ballot. Okay, well,
Mhm.
define insurrection. It's not defined. Is due process required? Because the Constitution also says you cannot deny anyone of, you know, life, liberty, property without due process. It's like the Fifth Amendment, and uh, these are major constitutional issues that are country change. How many times have you seen that? Two of them in 2 weeks.
Never.
Never.
2 in 2 years. I mean, this is. I said something to my son, and he reminds me every time we talk on the phone. I think he was in seventh grade, which would put him. He's 30 years old now, a long time ago. I looked at him and I said, I think at some point we're going to see, something very close to a civil war. And it's going to be based on politics, and that kind of seems with all of these states, everybody clashing now. It seems like we're going down that road. So you're right. Two in
And
one week or 2 weeks.
you know why Texas is kind of the front runner on this is there are three electric grids in the US: East, West, and Texas. So
Texas.
Texas
Yep.
can disconnect from the US
Yep.
electrically, which is important, without any ramifications. But in terms of like what's going to happen, I think the main thing about 24's election we can say when we look back is that anything you expect right now probably won't happen. So like I don't think Trump's going to be the nominee. I don't think Biden's going to be the nominee. Uh, I don't think we're going to get a recession. Like everybody expects a recession right now, and I used to expect a recession, but it doesn't seem to be happening. And I just think all the things we can predict are going to be it's going to be totally unpredictable this year. In
That's
part because of
typically
bad
bad.
actors, and in part because of good actors.
Yeah, that is typically. I got to go back to the market. That's typically bad for market. The market hates uncertainty, right? Whenever you introduce any type of uncertainty around elections, the recession will. I think we're getting certainty there. Does that cause us to? Everybody likes to say, well, we're going to see the market crash 20, 25, 30%. Or is this one of those situations where are braced for impact already? The expectations are that it's going to be I don't know if I can say shit show or not, but Ryan can beep it out. Um, if the expectations are that bad and it doesn't go off, does the market go through the roof? What do you see there? S&P 500. You gave me a Bitcoin number on the S&P 500. Where do you see things going?
I don't predict the overall market because it's almost unimportant to my approach to investing, which is I look for companies, for really good companies in exponentially growing industries, because no matter what, in the long run, they will not only survive, they will do well. If an industry is exponentially growing, like
Mhm.
AI or genomics or 3D printing or robotics or crypto, if something's exponentially growing, and all those industries I just mentioned are, then you buy a handful of companies. You don't even have to predict which ones are going to be good and which ones are bad. You buy a handful of companies, you'll survive the bear markets, and in the bear markets, you should probably double down on those companies. And eventually, Amazon, which was like the equivalent of $1 in 2001, and is now, I don't know, thousands of dollars, not split adjusted. Uh, you're going to have some winners that are so enormous that you create real wealth for yourself. Like $1,000 investment in Amazon in like 2001 would be worth millions now.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't
Uh,
matter to me what the market does.
yeah. I saw something really cool just yesterday. It was Jeff Bezos, 1997, being interviewed about why he was starting Amazon.com. Have you ever seen that? I mean, it's
No,
like an old grainy television interview. He was working for a hedge fund in New York City. He was looking
D.
through
Shaw.
business plans. Huh?
D. Shaw was the hedge fund.
Yeah. He was working there, looking through business plans because he wanted to start a company. And the reason he chose Amazon.com was because of the number of products he was able to sell when it came down to books. He said, usually, if you look at a product line for companies, they can have 15, 20, 50 different things. But if you look at it at any given time, there are 3 to 4 million books that are actively in print in different languages around the world. And it was a great market. It was just about having a number of things to sell, not necessarily what it was, but just volume of what you could sell.
Yeah.
Ingenious. I mean, wow. I don't know why I
This
had to go through
reminds me of like the Forbes top billionaires list, the Forbes 400 or whatever. And
huh?
Mackenzie Bezos, Jeff Bezos's ex-wife, is on there because she's got $60 billion. And this is not a knock on her. This is a knock on Forbes. They, a lot of people are hedge fund managers or entrepreneurs or tech. Her occupation is listed as author. And I was thinking of calling Forbes and saying, listen, she did not make $60 billion as an author. She doesn't write that. I mean, she's a great writer, perhaps. The greatest writer in the world is not going to make $60 billion writing books. And just say it. She's the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos. That's why she's got $60 billion. By the way, he owns the largest bookstore in the world, so she still has an unfair advantage as an author. Like, just tell the truth for once, Forbes. I once asked
She's
Steve Forbes, there are a lot of billionaires not on your list. They're like, not every billionaire runs a public company. And he's like, no, our list is very accurate. And I'm like, how come you don't know all the billionaires that I've seen that your list doesn't include? But
yeah.
anyway,
All right, hold on. I'm going to ask one more question because we're going to have a little bit of fun. In your book, Choose Yourself, you discuss the importance of self reliance and personal empowerment. How can individuals cultivate a mindset that enables them to confidently navigate through uncertainty and adversity? That's right from ChatGPT.
very good ChatGPT question because it always knows the answers to these questions. But
Yeah.
this daily practice I described of every day looking back and saying, did I give my best effort to a little improve at how I'm taking myself care of myself physically? Like, did I eat well? Did I sleep well? Did I exercise well? Did I improve my relationships? Like return calls, keep, do things for family and so on. And really importantly, did I write these 10 ideas a day down? Because when I started doing that, I was so down and depressed. But then within like 2, 3 weeks of doing this every day, this is back in 2002, I suddenly was happy for the first time in like 3 years at that point. And I was excited to get up every day and go to a cafe and write down my list of 10 ideas. And it gave me things to think about, it gave me things to hope for. And it really changed my life and still does when I get down or you know, everybody has different base levels of happiness. Mine's probably fairly low, but doing things like that keep me happy.
I like it. I like it. I'm gonna have to start pulling around a check pad. You said you use a waiter's or a
Yeah.
server's pad.
Yeah, because I love the way they look. It has this sort of retro look and it can
Yep.
fit in your pocket really easily. But I bought a hundred waiters pads for 10 cents, so for $10, so it's 10 cents a pad. When you go to a meeting, everybody pulls out their fancy, $500 notepad, and I just slap my waiter's pad down on the table, and always 100% of the time, someone at the meeting will say, "I'll take a Coke with that burger," and that's the joke people make every time. And then the second thing is they see, oh, I'm frugal, not like all these other, people with the $500 notepads, and it's very easy to take notes because it's bullet points, natural for bullet points, and I like the form factor. I could write down the names of. They have the little shapes of tables at the top, so I could have the names of the people around the table, so I could remember who was at the meeting. Great
That's a hack. All right, I'm gonna buy.
hack,
I'm gonna
life
get
hack.
some. Yeah, that's a hack. All right, we're gonna run up on a hard stop because of our production here. But I always ask,
One more life hack: wear scrubs at an airport. Don't ask why, just trust me.
do they just let you through? I mean, is it like a golden key?
It's almost like a golden key. Yeah,
Really? I don't know
scrubs.
if I'd look good
I
in
have like three
scrubs, but
sets of scrubs.
yeah, different colors or just is it like the really blue? You
Yeah,
beat them up
just
in the
don't
washing machine too, and wash them a bunch so they look worn.
yeah, mine are definitely worn. So,
All right. All right. I always like to ask everybody, you got any questions for me? Anything.
well, from a technical analysis point of view, what do you see in the market this year?
Ay, 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 ay. You know what? I'm that guy that's a contrarian. I hate the fact that everybody loves the market. I really do. I think that the crowd goes to psychology. But at the same time, I look at that. I'm old school. So I look at what the bond market is doing. They talk about the bond market being the smartest money out there. The bond market's emerging from a multi-year bear market. That's never bad for stocks. That's never. So I look at this as everybody's expecting something really a crappy year, or they're expecting this weird year. And those are typically the ones that play out and they're really good. And you already mentioned it, man. AI is the biggest tailwind um, that I have seen for any market. And I think we're
Yeah.
just kind of it
That-
is. I love I love your AI 2.0. I mean, that is we are only getting into where this is really going to start unfolding and get interesting.
Well, think about it. Like, it's estimated that AI is going to add $15 trillion a year to the global economy. 15 trillion
Yep.
within the next few years. And it- where where is that money coming from? It's it's not the people who create AI because okay, maybe that'll be up to a trillion, but then there's another 14 trillion. So
Mhm.
that's all going to these companies that are going to use AI to basically improve their efficiency, improve the economy, and then every one of those dollars, someone is going to own one of those dollars among the 15.7 trillion dollars. I want to make sure I own some of those as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you going to miss anything because of AI?
No, I, I. All right. Look, if Neuralink starts putting computers in your brain and no one can detect that, then I think some things like chess tournaments are gone as a viable game to play. Like it's an existential threat to some games that I enjoy playing, but that's about it.
Will there ever be? I mean, is it just going to chess masters? Will they always be beaten by AI? Does it get that smart, or will we always?
100%
What's
of the
that?
time.
Hundred
100%
percent.
of the time. It wasn't always that case, of course. I mean, and I've been building. I was building chess programs in the 80s and 90s, and I mentioned I worked a little bit on Deep Blue, which was the computer that beat Kasparov in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
But or 1997. Uh, but now that was a long time ago. Now humans cannot touch
Mm.
computers at all. In fact, an important reason why humans are better now is because computers have taught humans how to play better chess.
Yeah, I could see that easily. Yeah, that'd be like me going out and playing. I like to play ice hockey. I play in a beer league with a bunch of guys. If somebody pops out there that's a college player, all of a sudden we're playing better because we're trying to compete against somebody that's better. So I could see that. Raising the bar is going to make the humans better in chess just against
Well,
AI. Is Go
even
ahead.
look at the college player, right? His training methods in college, like if he's a serious college player with a coach, they're using computers and AI to improve. They take video of him, the AI
Yep.
models that and sees where he could have turned 2/10 of a second faster, where he should have been aware on the board, on the field a little better, or the
Yep.
ice rink or whatever. So computers are improving the training methods in almost every sport.
We afraid of any Whopper situations? Remember Elliot and my gosh, what was that movie? War
War games?
Games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
No?
I'll
We'll
tell
just
you,
pull the plug.
I'll give you one example. In 1989, I applied for a job at MIT Lincoln Laboratories, which was a collaboration between MIT and the Department of Defense. And the job was um, to write software to figure out which objects in space that you could see from radar, which objects in space were space junk or which ones were nuclear missiles heading towards the US. And so that technology to do that has existed since then. And so we've already had the power of a war games for at least 30 years. And there hasn't been anything close to, I mean, maybe there was one Russian situation that where there was faulty software that almost triggered a disaster, but humans got involved, even in Russia, which we think of as so, the Soviet Russia was so dictatorial and so on. But, humans don't want a nuclear war, and they're not going to give AI, maybe I should never say never, but AI has the technology has been there, and no one has ever let AI anywhere near close to the ability to launch a war.
Turn the key.
Nor
Yeah.
should they.
All right. All right,
Everyone
man.
knows that. They've known that for decades. Like they'd have to change their mind of a decades long, institutional philosophy that not to let AI do that or computers in general.
We'll still hold those basic tenets is basically what you're saying. There'll always be a it sounds like there'll always be a plug we can kick out of the wall if we need to.
And we can be comforted by the fact that again, this technology has already existed for a long time and it hasn't happened. It's not new like ChatGPT or the new AIs that we see. This is the technology that you know deters our nuclear wars, and it works and it's fine and no one's going to change it.
I'm thankful. All right, James, this has been awesome. I like rapping with you. This is fun.
Yeah, thanks. Have me on anytime. I really love talking to you, and I love the Money Map audience. And look, I read the newsletters. I observe all the content. So have me on whenever.
Appreciate it. That'd be great. I'll make a note and let's definitely circle back again. This has been a great conversation. Always fun.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks so much.
Hey, good luck with the election. I'll look for you. I did go and check on the FEC, and now you've got me thinking maybe I'll go and do my own filing.
You
Yeah,
absolutely should. Look, I'm a
great.
strong believer. People should do experiments in their life every day, and this is a good experiment.
All right, I'll send you a link. I'll send you a link after I do it.
I'll write in your name.
All right. Thanks again, James Altucher. This has been fantastic. Let's get together and talk AI and all the things again very soon. Appreciate you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Bye.
Have a great day.